The first question I've been asked today is from Rajat. What he wrote is, how to pray to Bhagavan and what is the best thing to pray for? Has Bhagavan said anywhere that if we pray to him for love for him, he will bless us with this love? Also a humble request, please if possible, could you explain Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai on the channel? I'll answer the last thing first about Akṣaramaṇamālai. Yes, I've been planning for quite a while now to start giving a series of talks about the verses of Akṣaramaṇamālai, but before doing it, I want to prepare thoroughly, and I haven't had time to do so because I've just it's very difficult for me to focus on any work at present because I get so many emails and other communications every day, and so that's why I haven't been able to start yet. But Bhagavan willing, I will start sooner or later. Someone's Bhavani, can you mute your mic because the background noise? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, so I will hopefully I'll be able to start giving talks about Akṣaramaṇamālai sooner or later, but that's all in Bhagavan's hands when he gives me time to prepare for it. Regarding your first question, how to pray to Bhagavan and what is the best thing to pray for? Well, obviously we should pray for what Bhagavan wants to give us, which is first and foremost complete surrender. In other words, annihilation of ego. But in order to surrender ourselves completely to him, we need to have all-consuming love for him. So obviously praying for love is also appropriate. But anything related to this goal of complete surrender is an appropriate thing to pray for. Bhagavan has given us a prayer manual, we can say, in the form of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, particularly Akṣaramaṇamālai. It's full of very heart-melting prayers, and including very explicit prayers for love. Regarding how to pray, we can pray in any way we like, whatever suits us. If we are fortunate to know Tamil, we can be reciting Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan's Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, and songs on Bhagavan by devotees like Murugan and Sadhuam. We can be just praying in our heart. We can be talking to Bhagavan in our heart. Whatever suits us, whatever appeals to us. There's no rights and wrongs about prayer. Prayer is just opening our heart to Bhagavan, and whatever way suits us, appeals to us most, we can in that way do so. Bhagavan, one thing Bhagavan said about prayer is in Maharshi's Gospel, in the second chapter of the second part of Maharshi's Gospel, which is called Sadhana and Grace. One of the questions Bhagavan was asked is, I'll just read the series because it's a nice series. Someone says, does knowing myself imply knowing God? Bhagavan replies, yes, God is within you. Then what stands in the way of my knowing myself or God? Bhagavan replies, your wandering mind and perverted ways. The devotee asks, I am a weak creature, but why does not the superior power of the Lord within remove the obstacles? Bhagavan replies, yes, he will, if you have the aspiration. The devotee asks, why should he not create the aspiration in me? Bhagavan says, then surrender yourself. And the devotee says, if I surrender myself, is no prayer to God necessary? And then Bhagavan says, surrender is itself a mighty prayer. In fact, I think we could say surrender is the mightiest prayer of all. To the extent that we give ourselves to Bhagavan, to that extent he will absorb us into himself. So surrender is the key to it's the key to self-investigation. It's the key to all spiritual practice, and most of all, it's a key to prayer. And then I'll just read one more thing. The devotee then asks, but is it not necessary to understand his nature before one surrenders oneself? And Bhagavan says, if you believe that God will do for you all the things you want him to do, then surrender yourself to him. Otherwise, let God alone and know yourself. This is why Bhagavan often used to, though essentially the path of self-investigation and surrender are one and the same path, in order to suit different temperaments, Bhagavan sometimes used to present his teachings in the form of surrender and sometimes in the form of self-investigation. But ultimately, the two are one and the same. We cannot surrender ourselves completely without investigating and knowing what we actually are. And we cannot investigate ourselves without thereby surrendering ourselves. To the extent that we turn our attention within, to that extent are we surrendering ourselves. And every effort we make to turn within is itself a prayer for his grace, because by turning within, our effort to turn within is an expression of our willingness to give ourselves to him. And giving ourselves to him, as Bhagavan says, surrender itself is a mighty prayer, the mightiest prayer of all, I would say. But that is because we still have very strong outward going inclinations, vasanas, we are not able to keep our mind turned within all the time. So when the mind is outward turned, it is good to pray to Bhagavan in words, talk to him, ask for his help to turn us within. And so whatever, as I say, whatever suits us, we can pray in whatever way suits us. But abundant guidance on prayer has been given to us by Bhagavan in the form of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, or 5 hymns to Aruṇācala, and most especially in Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. Regarding your second question, has Bhagavan said anywhere that if we pray to him for love, he will bless us with this love? Well, what I just read, where Bhagavan said, if you believe God will do for you all the things you want him to do, then surrender yourself to him. There he implies, but if we pray to him sincerely, he will give us, provided we are praying for the right thing. And obviously the best thing to pray for is love, because only by love can we surrender ourselves to him. He also says in Nāṉ Ār, who am I, in the 13th paragraph, which is the paragraph particularly about surrender, in the second sentence he says, Isan peril evelavu bharate potalum avalaveyum abavahitu kolukira. That means even though one places whatever amount of burden on God, that entire amount he will bear. So if we pray to him for love, we are putting the burden on him, we are giving him the burden of giving us love. So he will certainly bear that burden. He will certainly, so the clear implication here is, if we pray to Bhagavan for love, he will certainly grant it. That is, because what does Bhagavan want to give us? He wants to give himself to us. And in order for him to give himself to us, we have to give ourselves to him, because it is we as ego who stand between us and him. So only to the extent that we surrender ourselves, surrender this ego, to that extent are we opening our heart to him. So he wants to give himself to us. We must be willing to accept it, and we are willing to accept it to the extent that we remove ourselves from the picture. That is, to the extent that we as ego subside. So if we pray to Bhagavan for love, he will certainly give us love unfailingly. And talking about prayer for love, Bhagavan has in Akṣaramaṇamālai, in verse 101 of Akṣaramaṇamālai, Bhagavan wrote a most beautiful prayer for love. Ambu vilalipol, amburu vanilene, anbai karitaral Aruṇācala. Like ice in water, melt me as love in you, the form of love. So that is such a beautiful prayer for love, because we tend to think of love in human terms. We think love is always for another, but as Bhagavan has pointed out, what we all have the greatest love for is for ourselves. He says that very clearly and explicitly in the first paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. In this first paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, it was not part of the original answers that Bhagavan gave to Shiv Kashampalai. He added this first paragraph when he rewrote the question and answer version as an essay. He added this first paragraph, and in the first paragraph he says, I won't read the whole thing, I'll just read the relevant bit. Yavakum taniditilaye parama priyam irupadalam. Since for everyone the greatest love is for oneself. So we all have love for ourselves. And above whatever else we may love, why do we love it? We love things because they make us happy. Because as Bhagavan says in the next clause, priyataku sukume karanamādalalam. For love, happiness alone is the cause. So, since we all have love for ourselves, the greatest love is self-love. And so long as we take Bhagavan to be something other than ourselves, our love for him is imperfect. So in order to love him wholly and fully, we must lose ourselves in that love. That's why Bhagavan uses that beautiful analogy of like ice in water, like ice, just as if an iceberg is floating in the ocean, what is the iceberg? It's nothing but the ocean is water and the iceberg is water. So in substance, the iceberg and the ocean are one and the same thing. But the iceberg is a solidified bit of that vast ocean. Likewise, ego is, so to speak, a frozen, solidified bit of that vast ocean of love that is Bhagavan, that infinite ocean of love that is Bhagavan. So it's only by melting and losing ourselves in him that we can truly love him as he loves us. He loves us as not other than himself. We must learn to love him as not other than ourselves. So long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as separate, and so he seems to be other than us. If we to the extent that we melt in love, we will merge back and become one with him, and thus we will love him as ourselves, as he loves us. There will be no separation between him and us. So then only will our love for him be perfect. So we can say love is the most important of all things to pray for, because love is both the path and the goal. The ultimate goal we are all seeking is that infinite love. Because as Bhagavan says, we are all seeking happiness without misery, and happiness and love are one and the same thing. In this connection, I was just going to say one other thing about, I've forgotten, an idea came to my mind in connection with this subject of prayer, but it's slipped my mind now. So yes, the simple answer to your question, how to pray to Bhagavan, and what is the best way to pray to, best thing to pray to Bhagavan for? Well, we pray for love and for the annihilation of ego and for complete surrender to him. And everything that is related to that. Bhagavan has given so many examples in Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam. And and above all, praying to him for love. That is the most important thing of all. And to pray for him in love, we can pray in words, but we don't even have to pray in words. We simply by silently in our heart, we can be beseeching that, we can be asking him for that love. We don't have to put it in words. And now I remember the other thing I was going to say. The most important thing about prayer is we are praying to Bhagavan or praying to Aruṇācala. What is Bhagavan or Aruṇācala? It is, or God or Guru or whatever we call it. It is that which is always shining in our heart as eye. So when we are praying, in order to make our prayer more effective, rather than directing our prayer outward, as if Bhagavan is something outside us, it's better to direct our prayer inwards, to understanding that Bhagavan is that which is always shining in our heart as eye. As he says in verse 8 of Upadēśa Undiyār, Anya bhavatin abanahamahum ananya bhavamay undipara. Natimun utumu mundipara. Anya bhava means, in that context, it means meditation on him, on God as something other than ourselves. Anya means other. Bhava can also mean attitude. The attitude that God is something other than ourselves. Anya bhava means not one meaning is meditation on what is other. The other meaning of bhava can be attitude. The attitude that God is something other than us. Rather than that, the ananya bhava, the meditation on God as not other than ourselves, or the attitude that he is not other than ourselves. He says, avanaham ahum ananya bhavam. That is the ananya bhava in which he is I. That is, God is that which is Bhagavan or God or Guru or Aruṇācala, whatever we call it, is that which is shining in us as I. So having that attitude that he is that which is shining in us as I, praying to him inward, that directing our prayer inwards, that is, as he says in that verse 8 of Upadēśa Undiyār, anatinam uttamam, that is best among all. So rather than directing our prayer outwards, as if Bhagavan is something outside ourselves, better to direct our prayer inwards. Because by directing our prayer inwards, we are also directing our attention inwards. So the prayer itself is leading us into the state of Atma-vichara, of self-investigation. So that is a partial answer to your question, how to pray. The best way to pray is to direct, even if we are praying in words, direct the prayer inwards with the conviction that Bhagavan is that which is shining in our heart as I. So Rajat, I hope that adequately answers your question. Manek, you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
My question is, actually, Bhagavan himself had mentioned that it is very important to have a guru.
Sorry, it's not coming through very clearly.
Sorry?
Your voice isn't coming through very clearly. I think maybe if you have the mic a little further away, it may be better.
Here now?
Now I can hear, yes.
Yeah. My question is that Bhagavan himself had mentioned that no amount of reading scriptures or no amount of doing good karma is enough. It's not compared to the touch of a real guru, a live guru. So I just want a little bit of clarification on that. Today, our access is only to books, to literature on Bhagavan, or know, anything to do with spirituality. So, what do you have to say about that, Manjari?
Okay. Sadhu Om used to say about that, a living guru, because people use this term living guru. He said, yes, a living guru is absolutely necessary. But what is a living guru? Guru is not the body. So a living guru doesn't mean a living body. But if living guru means a living body, the living guru will one day be a dead guru. Such a living guru is of no use to us. We want an ever-living guru. And the ever-living guru is Bhagavan. He is ever living in our heart as I. So having come to Bhagavan, there is no need for us to seek any other guru. Even if we were to find some other so-called living guru, that's a guru living in person, if that person is a genuine guru, what will they say? They will say, Guru is that which is shining in you as I. To know Guru, you must turn within. That is the purpose of the guru in human form, is simply to direct our attention back within. So Bhagavan has fulfilled that purpose. His physical body is no longer necessary because he has left us his teachings. If we still want a physical form, he has pointed out to his own guru, Aruṇācala. So Bhagavan is a guru. Bhagavan's teachings are revolutionary in so many ways. And one of the revolutionary aspects of his teachings is what he taught us about Guru. Because previously in Hinduism, most gurus have belonged to a sampradaya. A sampradaya means a lineage. Like Adi Shankara, his guru was Govindapada, and Govindapada guru was Gaudapada. So Shankara was belonging to a lineage, and after Shankara, there was so many lineages. Well, I mean, he established different mats, each had their own lineage. So even in Advaita, this idea of a lineage of guru was very much established. Likewise, in most other forms of in most other paths within Hinduism, lineages of guru was very much the established norm. Bhagavan, for Bhagavan, there is no lineage, because in fact, there are some people who say, oh, Bhagavan wasn't who criticize Bhagavan, saying he wasn't a properly qualified guru because he didn't have any guru. That is a false statement, because Bhagavan himself has said, Giri Uruvahiye Kirupe Kadale. Oh, no, not that one. Oh, Kutrumutraritane Gunamai Panital Guru Uruvayoli Aruṇācala. That is, shine as my guru, Aruṇācala, who shine as my guru, take control of me, take charge of me, removing my defects completely. Kutram mutru completely implies, along with their root ego, gunamai panita, give me all good qualities. So Bhagavan has said explicitly, Aruṇācala is his guru. And in another verse, he says what Aruṇācala taught him. Tirumbiya hamdane dinamaha kankan teriyamandrane Aruṇācala. That is turning within daily, that means constantly, see yourself with the inner eye. It will be known. So that is what Aruṇācala taught Bhagavan. So Bhagavan has revealed the Upadēśa his guru gave him. But how did Aruṇācala give that Upadēśa? Obviously, Aruṇācala cannot give Upadēśa in words, because Aruṇācala is in the form of a hill. Through silence, Aruṇācala is teaching, is the implication. So through silence, Bhagavan Aruṇācala taught Bhagavan to turn within. And now Aruṇācala has appeared in human form as Bhagavan to tell us to turn within. So we don't need any outward form of guru other than Aruṇācala and Bhagavan. Aruṇācala will be there long after us. I mean, Aruṇācala is a permanent form there for anyone to turn to at any time. And Bhagavan is always there in the form of his teachings, because what is what was the purpose of Bhagavan's appearing in human form? It was to give us these teachings. And he wrote these teachings he himself wrote in poetry in the form of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Upadēśa Undiyār, and Nāṉ Ār. He himself wrote, mostly in poetry, but one thing, there's Nāṉ Ār, who am I in poetry? He's written his teachings, so there can be no doubt about what Bhagavan's real core teachings are. He's expressed them in his own writings. So they will be with us they will be here for millennia. So we, having come to Bhagavan, we don't need any other guru. If we think some other guru is necessary, we haven't understood Bhagavan. Because Bhagavan said, God, Guru, and Self are one and the same. So Guru or God is that which is shining in our heart as eye. So the whole purpose of the outward form of Guru is only to turn us within. And regarding what you said about books, Bhagavan said about satsangha. Satsangha is necessary, but just like he said in Upadēśa Undiyār, when he was describing the different practices of bhakti, he talked about in the fourth verse, Didum idu puja japamam dhyanam uruvak ula toril undi para. Wait a second, let me just get it. In verse 4, he says, Didumidu, this is certain, puja japamum dhyanam urul vak ula toril. Puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of mind, speech, and body. Of speech, of body, speech, and mind, in that order. Wevu ahum ondril ondru. That's a very terse way of saying it, but what that means is each one is in this order. Each one is superior to the previous one. Superior means in its efficacy in purifying the mind, because the previous verse he talks about, he says, nishkarmiya karma, action done without desire, done for the love of God, purifies the mind, and thereby it will show the way to liberation. So the subject he's dealing with here is about the efficacy of different actions in purifying the mind. So this puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of respectively actions of body, speech, and mind, and in this order, each one is superior to the other. In other words, what is done by the body is less efficacious than what is done by the speech, and what is done by the speech is less efficacious than what is done by mind, because the body is relatively gross, speech is a little bit more subtle, mind is more subtle. So the more subtle is the more effective, more powerful, more efficacious. Likewise, exactly the same thing applies to satsangha. Bhagavan said, the physical satsangha is the grossest form of satsangha. Better than the physical satsangha is the mental satsangha. By reading Bhagavan's teaching, by thinking about his teaching, we are having that mental satsangha. But Bhagavan said, better than the physical satsangha is the Atma-vichara, that is the Atma-sangha, turning our attention within to know ourselves. That is the best satsanga of all. Because what is sat? Sat is that which is shining, and sat means the reality, or what is real. That is what is shining in us as I, that alone is sat. So turning our attention inwards, that is the best satsanga of all. So we shouldn't think that those who were with Bhagavan when he was physically alive were in some way more fortunate. Okay, they were fortunate. It was a very special privilege they had, but that is not necessarily the best form of satsanga. There's a nice story to illustrate this. Once there was a lady devotee who lived in Tirunamlai. She was actually from somewhere in North India or from some other part of India. She had come and settled there just to be able to spend time with Bhagavan. At one time, some relatives of hers came to visit, and they stayed 3 days. And during those 3 days, she had to remain at home cooking for them and attending to all their needs. So after they departed, she came to Bhagavan and said, "Oh, Bhagavan, for 3 days, I wasn't able to come to your hall." Bhagavan said, "It's better that you were there attending to their needs and thinking of Bhagavan when you're being here and thinking of them." What does that imply? More than the physical, being physically in Bhagavan's presence, thinking of Bhagavan from afar is better. It's better to be far away and thinking of him than close and thinking of other things. So that very clearly illustrates the best satsanga. Well, better than the physical satsanga is the mental satsanga. But the best satsanga of all, as Bhagavan said, is Atma-sangha, turning our attention within, being self-attentive. That is the best satsanga of all. So there is nothing that is lacking. Bhagavan has provided us everything we need. So I hope that adequately answers your question, Manik.
Yes, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go on to the next, Jyoti, I'll answer your question afterwards. I'll go on to the next written question now.
Sure.
And a friend who keeps his identity anonymous, he wrote to me, "I told a friend that we will get Manolaya on and off during the process of self-investigation until we achieve the final Manonasa. My friend did not agree with this. He said we should not get Manolaya in the process of self-investigation, and that if we are in that Manolaya, it indicates we are practicing wrong way of self-investigation. Is this correct? Can you clarify this for both of us?" And then he went on about this to explain this. He said, "In my experience, while I'm turning within and attached with myself, my mind is going into a state of blank. It is similar to before going to sleep, hypnagogic hallucination, a state devoid from ego, Manolaya. I can leave this as it is, or can bring the mind to keep observing the self by constant effort by the mind. I thought it is not necessary, as it gives work to the mind. The state of Manolaya is nothing related with breath control, as stated in verse 14 of Upadēśa Undiyār." I'll start by answering the second part of this. Manolaya and hypnagogic hallucination are two completely different things. Hypnagogic and hallucination, I wasn't familiar with the word, but hypnagogic hallucination, I think it is how it should be pronounced. I checked it. That is, when we're falling asleep, sometimes we sort of are in a state halfway between waking and dream. We're sort of slipping between waking and dream. That state in which sort of dream images appear while we're falling asleep, that is called hypnagogic hallucination. That is not Manolaya. Manolaya means dissolution of mind. In the state of Manolaya, there are no phenomena because there's no ego. All phenomena appear only in the view of ego. So any type of hallucination, whether hypnagogic or any other type of hallucination, is all phenomena experienced by us as ego. So long as we are experiencing phenomena of any kind whatsoever, we as ego are present there experiencing that. So that is not Manolaya. Manolaya means a state like sleep. Sleep is a state of Manolaya, or any similar state in which there is absolutely no awareness of any phenomena. That is Manolaya. I think there's a misunderstanding here about what is meant by Manolaya. This friend wrote, "In my experience, while I'm turning within and attached with myself, my mind is going into a state of blank. um, self-attentiveness, to describe it as a state of blank, is a little bit misleading, because self-attentiveness is a clarity of self-awareness. We are always self-aware, but generally, because we're more interested in being aware of other things, we neglect our our fundamental self-awareness. When we are investigating ourselves, we are being attentively self-aware. So it's a clarity of self-awareness. That clarity of self-awareness that we experience when being self-attentive is what Bhagavan calls spurana. Spurana, it's been interpreted in many different ways, because spurana basically means uh, uh, spur means to make known. Something that makes itself known is the verb for, but that is the Sanskrit word spur implies making itself known. So people have talked about spurana as if it's some sort of a vibration or a pulsation or all these things. A vibration or a pulsation is a type of spurana in the sense that it is making itself known. But Bhagavan is not talking about that. Even a flashing light is a spurana. But that is not what Bhagavan, the sense in which Bhagavan used the term. Bhagavan used it in the sense of, he talked about aham spurana, the spurana of I. That is the clarity of self-awareness, is what Bhagavan refers to as aham spurana. So when we turn our attention within to know ourselves, what we are experiencing is not a state of blank, it's a clarity of self-awareness. It's blank in the sense of, to the extent that our attention is focused on our own fundamental self-awareness, other things withdraw into the background of our awareness. And when our whole attention is wholly focused on ourselves, we are aware of ourselves alone and nothing else whatsoever. So it's a blank in the sense of all phenomena are absent, or they, at least to a large extent, they are absent. But blank is a rather negative word. What we are not seeking a void or a blank or anything. Bhagavan says that clarity in verse 12 of Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu. Bhagavan says, Parandru, it is not a void. It is not a, it is devoid of knowledge and ignorance of other things, but it is not a void. It is the fullness of self-awareness, the clarity of self-awareness. So if we think we're going into a state of blank, we are rather missing the point of self-investigation. We are attending to ourselves in order to be more and more clearly aware of ourselves, just as that fundamental awareness. So, as I say, the clarity of self-awareness, the aham spurana, that is the real, that is what we are experiencing when we are being truly self-attentive. And of course, that though, as Bhagavan said, though it seems to be something new, it is not actually something new. It is just it's a fresh clarity because we've been overlooking it, but that clarity is ever shining in our heart. So that is what we should be attending to, that clarity of self-awareness, which is always shining in our heart. And so long as you're experiencing any type of hallucination, it is your attention is going away from that clarity of self-awareness towards some other phenomena. Then this person said, I can leave it as it is, or can bring the mind to keep observing the self by constant effort by the mind. This again shows some lack of clarity of understanding of what self-investigation is. Keeping our attention, even say observing the self, that makes the self, it makes it sound like it's an object. It's not the self we need to attend to, it's ourself. It's we ourselves, it's we need to be attending to. It's not some object or thing that we are attending to. We are attending only to ourselves, that is to our own fundamental awareness of our own existence, that which is shining in us as I. Why this requires effort to be self-attentive? so long as vasanas are still present in the mind, that is, so long as we still have an inclination to attend anything other than ourselves, it does require effort to avoid allowing ourselves to be dragged outwards by our vasanas. So the effort is required to hold on to that self-attentiveness. Even though self-attentiveness is actually our natural state, we still need to hold on to it with effort. And if we think that either there's an alternative, either we keep observing ourselves or we just leave things as we are, that is where we can slip into a state of Manolaya. In the state of, when we are practicing self-attentiveness, we are trying to remain balanced between two things. On the one hand, being carried away by thought, by vasanas, and getting, in other words, being swept away by thoughts or awareness of things other than ourselves. On the other hand, slipping into Manolaya, into a sleep-like state. We want to remain balanced between the seeming dullness of Manolaya. It's only seemingly dull from the perspective of ego in the waking or dream state, but we want to, that seeming darkness of Manolaya on the one hand, and the seeming the activity of the mind on the other. So we're trying to remain balanced. In other words, we're remaining, that is the state of, or that is not perfectly, but it's coming close. We're trying to be in the state of what Bhagavan described as, what is sometimes described as Jagrat Sushupti, or Nanarutuil, as Bhagavan called it in Tamil, that is wakeful sleep. We want to be in a state devoid of thought, as in sleep. We also want to be in the state of perfect clarity. So that is remaining balanced in that state between the seeming darkness of Manolaya and the activity of waking and dream. We want to remain balanced between these two. This is the state that is called samadhi. It may not be the original etymology of the term, but one explanation of the term samadhi is it is samadhi. Di means mind or intellect. Sama means equal or in a state of equilibrium. So it's that state of balance where we don't succumb to thoughts and we don't slip into Manolaya, remaining in that state of equilibrium between those two. That is what we are trying to achieve. How do we achieve it? Simply by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness. So long as we are being self-attentive, we cannot slip into Manolaya. If we slip into Manolaya, that means we've let go of the self-attentiveness. If we are carried away by thoughts, we've let go of self-attentiveness. So long as we cling to self-attentiveness, we are remaining balanced between thoughts and Manolaya. That is what we are trying to. That is what we are trying to hold on to in self-investigation. And then he says regarding to keep observing, after saying he can bring the mind to keep observing the self by constant effort by the mind. And then he said, I thought it's not necessary as it gives work to the mind. Though it requires effort to hold on to self-attentiveness, so long as there are vasanas, it does require effort to hold on to self-attentiveness, but it is not a work. To the extent that we are self-attentive, the activity of the mind is the mind and its activity are subsiding. Work means doing something active. Being self-attentive is not a state of activity, it's a state of stillness. It's a state of just being as we are. Because what actually are we? Our real nature is pure self-awareness. So by clinging to self-attentiveness, we are subsiding into our natural state of pure self-awareness. So though it may seem to be an action, Bhagavan often talks about turning the mind within. So turning may seem to be an action, but actually it's not an action. It is a cessation of action. Because to the extent that we turn within, to that extent does ego subside. And to the extent that ego subsides, we remain in a state without activity. That is why the state of perfect self-attentiveness is described as Summa Iruppadu. Summa Iruppadu means just being. Bhagavan makes that very clear in Upadēśa Undiyār. I talked earlier about verse 8, where he says, Rabhavan Anyabhava, that's meditation on God as something other than ourselves. Ananyabhava, in which he is I, is the best among all. In the next verse, verse 9, he says, Bhava Balatinal Bhavanatita Sat Bhava Tirutale Undipara Parabhakti Tattva Mundipara. That the Bhava Balatinal means by the strength of Bhava. Bhava there means meditation. The meditation he's referring to is the meditation he talked about in the previous verse. That's the Ananya Bhava. So Bhava Balatinal here implies by the strength of self-attentiveness, Bhavanatita Satbhava Tirutale, being in Satbhava. Satbhava means the state of being. Bhavanatita, which transcends bhavana, transcends meditation, thinking or imagination or any mental activity, that alone is parabhakti tattva. So what he implies here is by the strength or the intensity or stability of our self-attentiveness, we will remain in the state of being, Satbhava Tirutale, and that state of just being transcends all bhavana. So it is wrong to think that, but by being self-attentive, we are giving work to the mind. We are restraining the mind. We are curbing the mind from getting involved in activity. In other words, we're avoiding work. We are just resting in the state, in our natural state of self-aware, of self-attentiveness. Effort is required, but it's not an effort to do anything. It's an effort just to be as we actually are. That is to be self-aware, be attentively self-aware. As I say, it seems there's some misunderstanding here about, or lack of clarity of understanding of what self-investigation actually is. So coming back to the first part of this question, I told a friend that we will get Manolaya on and off during the process of self-investigation until we achieve the final Manonasa. Well, it's true. Sometimes when we are being self-attentive, just like sometimes we get carried away by other thoughts, we also sometimes may slip into a sleep-like state. But that happens only when we have let go of, when we lose our hold on our self-attentiveness. So we may sometimes slip into a state of sleep, or which means a state of Manolaya, while practicing self-investigation. But we slip into that state because we've let go of the self-investigation. We've let go of the self-attentiveness. And then he says, my friend did not agree with this. He said we should not get Manolaya in the process of self-investigation. Yes, we shouldn't. We need, as I said, we need to avoid getting carried away by thoughts or by succumbing to sleep. We need to remain balanced between the thoughtfulness of waking and the seeming dullness of sleep. Though according to Bhagavan, sleep is not actually a dull state, it's a state of pure self-awareness. But from a perspective of the mind, of the ego, in waking and dream, sleep seems to be a state of darkness. So we don't want to slip into that state of seeming darkness, because that means ego has merged back into its source, but only temporarily. So it's Manolaya, not Manonasa. We need to hold on to that self-attentiveness until the clarity of it, until our self-awareness is so clear, but we are consumed by that clarity. That is what Bhagavan called the state in which sparana subsides. That is, when if you light a piece of camphor, it will continue burning until the camphor is completely exhausted, and then the flame will subside. Likewise, if we cling firmly to self-attentiveness, that clarity of self-awareness will, that sparana, that fresh clarity, will continue shining, but it will lose its freshness. It will continue shining eternally, but it will lose its freshness when ego is, that it will lose its newness. It will no longer seem to be something new when ego is completely consumed by it. Ego is there. I mean, that analogy Bhagavan used of the camphor, ego is the camphor. So it's by that clarity of self-awareness that we achieve by turning our attention within, but ego is consumed. When ego is consumed, then no further effort is necessary. We are then in our natural state and we remain in that state eternally. But during the process of self-investigation, just like we get carried away by thoughts, sometimes we will also sometimes slip into a state of sleep. But that's only because we're not then in the process of self-investigation. Only when we let go of the self-investigation, that will happen. And he goes on, he says, but his friend said, but if we're in that Manolaya, it indicates that we are practicing the wrong way of self-investigation. I wouldn't quite say it indicates that we are practicing the wrong way of self-investigation. It just simply means if we allow ourselves to succumb to Manolaya while being self-attentive, we have let go of the self-attentiveness. So I hope this clarifies this matter for both of these two friends who had this discussion about this. And the same friend who wrote this also asked me one other question. He said, according to Bhagavan, sleep is a state of is the pure state of awareness. That is egoless state. Can this ego leave the body without rising for good? In other words, a jiva can die while sleeping. If that happened to a person, it happened to my mum, what is the significance of that sort of separation? It's not the jiva but die. Jiva means ego. So ego doesn't die while we're sleeping. For many people, the body dies, but what dies while sleeping is the body. That happens for many people. People pass, they say so-and-so passed away peacefully in his or her sleep. It happens to people, but they, when they're old or sick or something, they often pass away peacefully in their sleep. What is this from a perspective of ego? When we fall asleep, ego merges back into its source, but it's only in a state of Manolaya. Though it's a state of pure awareness, it is only a temporary state of pure awareness. It is not. The state of pure awareness is eternal. Sleep seems to be temporary, only from the perspective of from our perspective in waking and dream, that is the perspective of ourself as ego. Sleep seems to be a temporary state. That is the only problem with sleep, is that we wake up from it again. It's temporary. But from the perspective of the pure awareness that shines in sleep, pure awareness is eternal. So there is no waking or dream. But from the perspective of ego in waking and dream, it seems, oh, I was asleep, but it was only a temporary sleep because I've woken up again. So the shortcoming of sleep, or of any state of Manolaya, is that it's only temporary. It's in order for ego to be annihilated, ego needs to be consumed by that clarity of self-awareness, that what Bhagavan calls sparana, that perfect clarity of self-awareness needs to consume ego entirely, like the camphor being consumed by the flame that catches it. Until the ego is consumed, if we go into a state of Manolaya, if we go into a state of dissolution of mind, which is what Manolaya means, that will only be a temporary dissolution. Sooner or later, the mind will rise again. In order to achieve a dissolution of mind from which the mind will no longer rise, we need to cling firmly to self-attentiveness. So coming back to this question, if the body dies in sleep, it's only in the view of others that the body dies in sleep. Obviously, the ego who attaches itself to that body, it has left the body when it falls asleep, so it's not aware of anything that may happen to the body while it's asleep. So the body passes away. What significance does that have? No particular significance, or no. It may have some significance, but it's not of any great spiritual significance. Though the body is dead, it's, as I say, it's only in the view of others that the body has died while asleep. The body, what is the body? The body is a mental projection. Just like in dream, we project a body and take that body to be I, and through the five senses of that body, we project and experience a world. Any body that we experience as I is just a mental projection. So when one body dies, or when the projecting of one body comes to an end, ego may remain for a while in a sleep-like state, but then again starts dreaming. So it again projects another body. So as far as the ending of the cycle of births and deaths is concerned, it makes no difference whether the body dies in the waking state or in sleep state. The body is gone, and so the ego continues dreaming other dreams, projecting other bodies. So it has no significance from a spiritual point of view. So I hope that adequately answers that question. I think I'll answer one more question if anyone had their hand raised. Jyoti, I'll answer your question and then maybe we can have a break.
Yeah, hi Michael. The question is very long, so I've put it in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
There might be network issues, so.
No, I'll see if I can find where's the chat box.
It's the longest question.
Oh, yes, okay. Do you want to read it?
Okay, I'll read it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the Bible, I have not read the Bible, but I saw this instruction in the internet. The Bible instructs that wives must submit to their husbands as they do to the Lord, and that we should surrender to each other as we do to the Lord. So my questions are, number one, if we are already surrendered to the Lord, do we need to be taught how to surrender to each other? Is there a difference between surrendering to each other's will and surrendering to God's will? And my second question is, can we think our way into surrender? Doesn't surrender happen automatically when we fall in love with someone? Or is it something we do?
Okay, good question. I think answer the last part of your question, I think is yes, to the extent that we love a person, if we truly love a person, we want to make that person happy. We want to, in a state of true love, love is concerned about giving, not about taking. So if a husband or wife is only concerned about what they can get from their partner, that is not true love. It's what we can give. That is, love is about giving. So the ultimate gift is to give ourselves. So in a happy married state, the husband and wife should both want to be giving. I mean, they should both be concerned about what they can give to the other rather than what they can take from the other. So in a sense, if it's in the right spirit and if it's a compatible couple, that in marriage can be a very good training ground for surrender. But obviously, the surrender to husband and wife, that is the giving of oneself to one's partner in love, not it shouldn't be forcible, but that is, and a lot of people, I mean, it is said in various religions that the wife has to be subservient to the husband, the wife has to do whatever the husband wants. That is, I think, a misinterpretation, a misunderstanding. Ideally, a marriage should be a state of love where the love is equal on both sides. Unfortunately, human relationships aren't always as perfect as we would like them to be. many of us end up in relationships with people where the other person is exploiting, particularly if you're of a giving nature, if you're of a conscientious nature, if you have a partner who is always trying to get what they can out of you, it can create a very unbalanced relationship. But even that can be a type of training for surrender, because I mean, supposing, for example, you're married, and if it's a really exploitive relationship, in some circumstances, it may be best to bring the relationship to an end, because it's not good for either party. But supposing you have children, and you feel for the sake of the children, you have to try and keep the marriage together. That is bearing with all the problems of that type of relationship, an exploitive relationship, can be a good training ground for surrender. I mean, we can take it, okay, it's Bhagavan's will, he's put me in this situation where I have this this husband or wife who's always taking advantage of me, but for the sake of the children, it's best to stay together. So I will bear this as, take it all as Bhagavan's will. I mean, that can also be. So in various ways, we can take marriage or any human relationship as a training ground for surrender. But the surrender to God goes far beyond this, because to what extent can we give ourselves to our husband or wife? We can give our time, we can be loving and attentive and caring and all those things, but we cannot give ourselves to them. The only one we can give ourselves to is God, because what is the self we want to give is this ego. How we give ourselves to God? By not rising as ego. And to avoid rising as ego, we need to turn our attention within. That's why in the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, which I referred to earlier, I think, I referred to the second sentence of the 13th paragraph, but in the first sentence, Bhagavan defines what is self-surrender. Anma chintane tabira, vera chintane kalambavatiku satram idam kodamal, atmanishta paranai iripade, tanai isanaku alipadam. Atmanishta paranai iripade means being as one who is established as oneself. Atmanishta. Atmanishta means being established as oneself. Atmanishta paran means one who is established as oneself. That means one who is being as oneself. He qualifies that with a clause, or he explains that with a clause. Anma chintane tabira vera chintane kalambavatiku satramidaku kadama. That is, in order to be Atmanishta paran, in order to be one who is firmly established as oneself, we need to not giving even the slightest room to arising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana literally means thought of oneself, but it implies self-attentiveness. So if we are so keenly, to the extent that we are self-attentive, to that extent we are not giving room for arising of other thoughts, because other thoughts can arise only if we attend to them. If our whole attention is on ourselves, there will be no room for other thoughts to arise. So what he means by Atma-chintane tabira, vera chintane kalamavatiku satramidam kadama, what he implies by that is, I mean, what it literally means is giving not even the slightest room to arising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. What it implies is being so keenly self-attentive that one thereby gives not even the slightest room to rising of any other thought. So if we are so keenly self-attentive, if our whole attention is focused on ourselves, there'll be no room, we won't be giving any room for any other thoughts to arise, because we won't give them our attention. So that is how we remain Atmanishta paran. And Bhagavan says, being Atmanishta paran in that way is tanne isanaku alipadam. That literally means is giving oneself to God. So how do we give ourselves to God? Only by being keenly self-attentive. So obviously we can give ourselves to God in that way. We cannot give ourselves to another person in that way, because other people seem to exist only when we raise as ego. Other people are part of this dream, and the whole dream consists of thought. So all those other people are just thoughts. Even the person we seem to be is just a thought. Even the ego who says, I am, that person is I am this person, is a thought. So Bhagavan said we need to be so keenly self-attentive, we don't give room to a rising of any other thoughts. That's not even room to a rising of ego. That is giving ourselves to God. So human relationships, particularly a marriage relationship or any type of human relationship, can be a training ground for giving ourselves. And as you say, the key to giving ourselves is love. We will give ourselves only to the extent that we have love. But we cannot love any other person beyond a certain limit, whereas we can love God wholly by giving ourselves entirely to God. How do we give ourselves entirely to God? Only by turning our attention wholly within, and thereby giving no room to the rising of any other thoughts. In that state in which there's no room for the rising of any other thought, there's no room for the appearance of any dream, because dreams are just thoughts. So since this whole life is a dream, and all the other people and the person we seem to be are all part of this dream, surrender goes far beyond the love of a human relationship. But the human relationship can be a training ground, can be a mean by which we learn to give, learn to subdue ego. So I think I've answered part of, let me see if I've answered everything. Oh, you say, if we are already surrendering to the Lord, do we need to be taught how to surrender to each other? No, I mean, our ultimate aim is to surrender entirely to God. Human relationships can, as I say, it can be a type of training for that, but only a partial training. It's not complete. But if supposing we are in a marriage relationship and we have a very selfish attitude, we only want to get from that relationship, not to give, or to get more than we give, that shows there's a strong ego there. If we're on this spiritual path, on this path of surrender, our ego will be subsiding more and more and more. So we'll naturally be more giving, be of a more giving disposition. Our husband or wife may not be as of the same disposition. That's all according to destiny, according to prarabdha. But for our part, we will be, we will naturally be of a giving nature, to the extent that our ego is subsiding. Is there a difference between surrendering to each other's will and surrendering to God's will? Yeah, well, yes, there is. I mean, obviously, when we are surrendering, surrender starts by surrendering to God's will. That is, we try to surrender our will to God's will. We try not to have any likes or dislikes of our own. We try to accept whatever happens as being God's will. But surrendering our will to God's will, that is a type of surrender, but that's surrender of the will, not surrender of oneself. Self-surrender means we have to give ourselves. And we cannot surrender our will entirely to God so long as we remain as a separate entity. So long as we rise as ego, we will have a will of our own. We may to a great extent surrender our will, but we will still to some extent have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. So long as the root is there, desires and attachments and likes and dislikes will continue sprouting. So self-surrender means surrender of ego. That is, ego is the root. So only when we cut the root are we completely surrendered to the will of God. Surrendering to the will of God is a partial surrender. It's a practice on the way to complete surrender. But the surrender becomes complete only when ego is surrendered. As far as human relationships are concerned, if we talk about just surrendering to each other's will, that can sound like it's like if you surrender to someone's will, it sounds a bit like you're being like that person, you're then giving room for that person to exploit you. Whereas in a loving human relationship, we are not exactly surrender. We are trying to give love. We are trying to give care, attention, and be loving. So thinking of marriage as surrendering to each other's will doesn't quite seem to fit. We are trying to lovingly care for, and we give attention to, we give care, we give affection, all these things, but it's not exactly surrendering to each other's will, because that sounds a bit too coercive. It sounds like that is, you could maybe say you're trying to achieve. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. When we surrender to God's will, we are trying to attune our will to his will. That is, whatever he wants, we accept that. So as Bhagavan says, ninishtam enishtam, your will is my will. Imbadaku, that is happiness for me. So whatever you want, that is, I'm happy with that. So in that way, in the path of surrender, we are trying to attune our will to the will of God. That is, we're trying not to have any will of our own, to accept whatever happens as his will for our benefit. So in the same way, in a marriage relationship, the husband and wife are trying to attune their wills. They may each have their own likes and dislikes, but they're trying to find common ground, shared interests, shared likes and things. But in a loving relationship, because everyone is different, you can't expect your husband or wife to be always under your will, or to always to like what you like. They may have their own interests, their own likes and everything. We give freedom to them. So that's all part of a loving relationship. But there has to be some common ground there, or there's no relationship at all. There needs to be some shared interests, shared concerns, shared things. It doesn't mean that you have, I mean, some relationships, some husbands or wives or partners or whatever, they want to be the center of everything, and they want their husband or wife to have no other interest in life except them. That is a very unhealthy type of relationship. Each should be free to have their own interests, but they because they're sharing their life together, they find common interests, and they share some things in common, and they have their own individual things. So a human relationship can never be equal to the surrender, or can never come anywhere close to the state of complete surrender to God, but it can be a type of partial training towards that. Does that adequately answer that question, Jyoti, or was there any other thing that I've missed?
No. The second question, we don't have to think our way into surrender. That
if you want to surrender, Bhagavan has very clearly said what we should think about if we want to surrender. Atma Chintane Tabira, accept Atma Chintane. Atma Chintane means thought of oneself. In other words, self-attentiveness, giving no room to the rising of any other thought. So if we are thinking of anything other than ourselves, we are not surrendering ourselves completely to God. So if we want to think ourselves way into surrender, we have to think of only one thing. Think of ourselves. That means be self-attentive. This is the first sentence of this paragraph 13. The rest of the paragraph, Bhagavan is, in this sentence, he says, giving not even the slightest room to rising of any chintana other than Atma Chintana, any thought other than thought of oneself. The rest of this paragraph, he explains why we need not think of anything else. As I said, in the next sentence, he says, even though one places whatever amount of burden on God, that entire amount he will bear. The implication there is, even the burden of thinking we can leave to him. If we focus all our attention only on being self-attentive, he will think of everything else. Anything else that needs to be thought of, he will think of it for us, is the implication. And then in the next sentence, he says, since one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas means everything that needs to happen or ought to happen or destined to happen is being made to happen by that one supreme ruling power. Even the actions we need to do, according to Prarabdha, we are made to do, as Bhagavan wrote in his note to his mother, Avarava Prarabdha Prakaram Adhikanavan Angangirundu Atavipan. That is, according to the Prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, meaning God or Guru, who being there, being the heart of each one of them, Atavipan will make them dance. Literally, it means that he will make us act. So according to destiny, supposing we have a family and we have to work and in order to provide for our family and everything, whatever actions we are destined to do to take care of our family, we will be made to do. That doesn't mean that all the actions we do are according to destiny, because our will is also, if we allow ego to rise, its will be also driving some actions. But the essential, all the karyas, everything that needs to happen will be made to happen by that one Parameshwara Shakti. So when that is happening, as Bhagavan goes on to say, instead of we also yielding to it, why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do this, it's necessary to do that? So Bhagavan says we need not even think about what we need to do. Leave it all to him. What actions our body, speech, and mind are destined to do, they will be made to do. Any actions we do beyond that are not going to change anything, because as Bhagavan said in that note to his mother, what is never to happen will not happen, however much effort you make. What is to happen will not stop, however much obstruction you make. This is certain. Therefore, keeping therefore being silent is best, is good. So we shouldn't even give, that is what Bhagavan is explaining here, is why we need not give the slightest room to rising of any other thought. Leave the whole burden to God. And then he gives a beautiful analogy. Though we know that the train is carrying all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily leaving our small luggage placed on it, that's placed on the train, suffer bearing our luggage on our head? So what is the implication of that analogy? Bhagavan is the train. He is directing our life. He's carrying us through this life. We can leave the whole burden to him and we can travel happily. How do we travel happily? By remaining Atmanishtaparan, by being Atmanishtaparan. And how can we be Atmanishtaparan, one who is firmly established as oneself? Only by being so keenly self-attentive that we thereby give no room to rising of any other thought. So it's only by, the only way to think our way into surrender is by is let our thought be only on ourselves. In other words, let it be wholly self-attentive. I think it is taking us away from surrender.
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much.
Right. The next question I've been asked by email is, it was an email from Rakesh. This is a similar question to one I was asked a bit earlier, but it's worth answering it again because it's such an important point. Rakesh asked two questions. The first is, my understanding from, he says, I've been reading extensively the teachings of Bhagavan and various other scriptures. My understanding from these is that a guru is essential for spiritual progress. If that is the case, I want your guidance as to how I can find a guru. Can you suggest anyone? Well, I have read, when the disciple is ready, guru will appear. Yes, a guru is essential, generally, for all of us. Even Bhagavan said Aruṇācala is his guru. So though generally Bhagavan is assumed not to have had a guru, according to Bhagavan, his guru was Aruṇācala. But Aruṇācala is his own self. So according to Bhagavan, God, guru, and self are all one and the same. As far as guidance, how to find a guru, I can only say one thing. What better guru can you ever hope for than Bhagavan. Bhagavan is, if you say you've been reading Bhagavan's teachings are all we need. If we sincerely want, what is our goal? If our goal is the eradication of ego, which is what Bhagavan said is the only worthy goal, Bhagavan is the perfect guru. He's given us all that we need to guide us in how to eradicate ego. The purpose, as I said earlier, the purpose of guru in human form is to give us teachings. Bhagavan has given us those teachings. What Bhagavan said about guru is that which is always shining in you as I. There was a devotee of Bhagavan called Janaki Mata. Once when she came to Bhagavan, when she was visiting the ashram, she saw, one day she saw Bhagavan was returning from the Goshala. Goshala means the cowshed where Lakshmi and the other cows lived. And Bhagavan often used to go there to see the cows. So one day he was returning from there. There were not many people about. There may have been one or two people accompanying Bhagavan, but not many people about. So Janaki Mata thought this is a very good opportunity. So she approached Bhagavan. She bowed down, prostrated at his feet, and she held his feet in her hand and put her forehead on his feet. Bhagavan looked down at her with a smile and asked, "What are you doing?" She said, "I am holding the feet of my guru." Bhagavan said, "These feet are not the feet of your guru. This body is perishable. So this body, this is not guru. That is, this body is perishable. So these feet are also perishable. The real feet of guru are that which is imperishable. That is shining within you as I. Cling to those feet. They alone will save you." So the real guru like Bhagavan will always be turning us back within. We'll be saying the real guru is that which is within you as I, shining within you as I. So if we've understood Bhagavan, there is no need for us to look for any guru outside. So if a tall and outward guru is necessary, Bhagavan is our outward guru, or Bhagavan, Aruṇācala, Ramana are one and the same. And what is Aruṇācala Ramana? Bhagavan himself, when he was asked his real identity, he said, Aruṇācala Ramana is the Paramatma which blissfully exists as awareness in the heart of all, in the cave of the heart lotus of all jivas, all sentient beings, all different sentient beings, beginning with Hari. So from the greatest God to the tiniest ant, that which is shining in the heart of each and every sentient being as awareness, that is Aruṇācala Ramana. And then he goes on to say, he says it very beautifully, that Bhagavan doesn't just ask us to believe that, he asks us to experience it ourselves. So he in the last two lines of that verse, he teaches us how to experience it. Parival ula ulam uruha, that is with the heart melting with love. Nala paranan didu goheyandu, entering the heart where that sublime supreme abides. Arivam viri tirava, that is the eye of awareness opening. That's the eye of jnana. Arivam viri means, it literally means the eye which is awareness, but it implies the jnanakan, the eye of knowledge, of pure awareness, will open. Nijam arivai. You will know this truth. Adu veliyam, it will reveal itself. It will come out. It will reveal itself. It will make itself known. So, but in order to know that is the real guru, Aruṇācala Ramana, is that which is the Paramatma, which is shining in the heart of each and every one of us as pure awareness. In order to know that guru, we have to, with heart melting with love, we have to turn within and enter that cave where he dwells. That the cave is a metaphor here for our heart. He says in the first line, Ahavarija, that's the heart lotus, Guhayal, in the cave of the heart lotus. So that means within in our heart, we have to enter our heart where he's dwelling, and with the heart melting with love, and then the eye of knowledge will be open. So looking for Guru outside is looking in the wrong place. Guru is within. Guru appears outside only to tell us to turn within, to tell us that the real Guru is that which is ever shining within your heart as I. So if you want it, when you say you want my guidance for how to find a Guru, you have found a Guru already. You say you've been reading the teachings of Bhagavan extensively. What more Guru than Bhagavan do you need? And Bhagavan is, as I said earlier, people think a living Guru is necessary. What they mean by living Guru is a Guru whose body is living. But Bhagavan is the ever-living Guru because he's always living in your heart as I. He is the Guru from whom you can never be separated. If you find a Guru in human form, you won't be able to be all the time with that Guru in human form. I think the only Guru who made himself available 24/7 was Bhagavan. Bhagavan's hall was always open to everyone because that is that Bhagavan lived his life outwardly, representing how he is inwardly. So in our heart, he is ever available to us. He's available to us 24/7. So his outward form he made available to devotees 24/7. Anyone could come at any time of the day or night and enter Bhagavan's hall. So Bhagavan was always open to all, and even now he is always open to us. He's ever shining in our heart as I, ever accessible to us. And if we want an outward form of Guru to cling to, we've got his pictures, and we've also got Aruṇācala. Bhagavan has made it very clear that he and Aruṇācala are one and the same. In Atma-vichara, he says in the last verse of Atma-vichara, he says, Anamalai en Anma, that is Anamalai myself, or Anamalai, which is self, which is called Anamalai. En can be taken either as my or which is called. So it can mean oneself, who is called Anamalai. That's Anma here means Atma-swarupa, our real nature, which is called Aruṇācala, or Anamalai, my real nature. So Bhagavan is clearly here, he's identifying himself with Anamalai, Aruṇācala. And in this verse I just read, Aruṇācala Ramana, he was asked, who is Ramana? He replies, who is Aruṇācala Ramana? That is, he identifies himself as one with Aruṇācala. And as he says very explicitly, for example, in the second verse of Aruṇācala Pancharatnam, he says, Nityamum nan indridaya naditiduvai. That is, you are always shining, you're always dancing in the heart as I. So Bhagavan is ever available. Bhagavan or Aruṇācala, which are one and the same, is ever available in our heart as I. So to know Bhagavan as he is, we have to turn within. So the outward, Bhagavan has already appeared in outward form as our Guru, but what he has told us to do, turn within, then only you will know Guru as he is. That is, what Bhagavan actually is that which is shining in our heart as I. So if we are still looking outwardly for a Guru, we have missed the whole point of Bhagavan's teaching. The whole point of Bhagavan, what Bhagavan revealed about Guru is that the function of Guru in human form is only to turn our attention back within, to find the real Guru is always shining in our heart as I. And your second question is, do you know of any enlightened beings currently in human form? Bhagavan often used to say that is, by enlightened being, I assume you mean jnani. Bhagavan often used to say, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana means pure awareness. What knows, and jnani means that which knows pure awareness. What knows pure awareness? Only pure awareness knows pure awareness. So jnana me jnani. The jnani is not the human form that he appears to be. The jnani is that pure awareness which is always shining in our heart as I. So that's one thing Bhagavan often said, jnana me jnani. Another thing he sometimes used to say when people asked about who is enlightened, whether this person is enlightened or that person is enlightened, Bhagavan sometimes used to say, there is only one jnani, you are that. That is, so long as we see others, we may see Bhagavan as if he's other, and we may say he's a jnani, but we are not seeing him as he is. Bhagavan is nothing other than our own self. So long as we see him as a person outside, we are not seeing him as he actually is. But the jnani, that is, jnana is our own real nature. As Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, jnana mam tane me, oneself who is awareness alone is real. So that we are self of that jnana, we are self of a jnani. So long as we're looking outwards, we seem to be an ego. But when we turn within, we will find that what we actually are is jnana swarupa. That is, our real nature is jnana. What we actually are is jnana. Looking for jnanis outside, we are missing the point. That is, again, Bhagavan, the whole purpose of the real guru like Bhagavan is to turn our attention within. So if we're looking for guru or enlightened beings outside, we're looking in the wrong place. They had to be found only within, because as I say, when you look outwards and you see a person and you say this person is a jnani, that itself is ignorance, because no person is a jnani. What does being a jnani mean? It means being aware of ourselves as we actually are. What we actually are is not a person. So long as we think I am this person, we are not aware of ourselves as jnana. When we are aware of ourselves as jnana, as what we actually are, we will know that we are not this person or any other person. We never have been any person. We are only that jnana. So true knowledge cannot be found outside. True knowledge can be found only within, because looking outside, we see multiplicity. The reality is one and one only, and you are that. So if we've understood Bhagavan correctly, we should understand what we need to look for is within ourselves. So long as we're still looking outside, we haven't understood Bhagavan correctly. So the choice is ours. Do we want to go on looking for gurus outside or looking for enlightened beings and remaining in ignorance ourselves? Or do we want to turn within and find the jnana which is ever shining in our heart as I? Because there's no jnana outside. Jnana is our own real nature. We can find it only within. I hope that...
Thanks, Michael. Yes, it answers my question. Thanks, Michael.
Okay. And then Sanjay, you have your hand raised.
Yes, sir. Is my voice clear, sir?
Yes.
Yes. So I've got two questions, sir. First question is, I believe Bhagavan once said that when we attend to things other than ourselves, we do so with just a part of our mind, and that too with many interruptions. However, when we are exclusively self-attentive, we do so with our entire mind or attention and without interruptions. So I think what Bhagavan means is that when we try to turn our attention within, we are trying to bring all the functions of our will, intellect, and mind in one focus. Is it a correct way of describing it? Bringing the entire will, mind, and intellect in one focus, and all the functions of the mind is unifocused and turned in one direction only, namely within ourselves. I think somewhere Bhagavan said that the self-investigation is the most intense activity one can do. Of course, it is not an activity
Yes.
in the sense that it is not an action, but just metaphorically, Bhagavan described it as the most intense because our entire mind is focused on that one thing, the will, intellect, and mind. So could you please comment on this and expand on this or whatever?
Yes, but what you're referring to is recorded by Swaminathananda in Upadēśa Mañjari. I think it's probably the second sentence, the second chapter of Upadēśa Mañjari, the Abhyasa Prakaranam, the fourth question. Suma irke embadu muichi ulla nilaya muichi atra nilaya. That means the question is what is called suma irke a state of effort or an effortless state? Bhagavan answers, it is not a state of sombal, it's not a lazy state or without effort. Very mukatil muichi. What are called efforts from an external point of view, but that is the worldly activities which are called effort from an external point of view. They are with a divided mind, a scattered mind. How much they're with a scattered mind and interrupted, because when our attention is going outward, there's so many thoughts, so they're constantly, we're not focusing on one thing. Attention is going here, there, darting from one thing to another. So that is the external activity. And then he says, ahamukatil, in self-attentiveness, in facing oneself, in the state of, in the Atma state of which is called summa irke, just being, which is in facing inwards, but with the whole mind, muru manataran, ide indriyam, without break, without interruption, sayapadam purana murchiyahum. It is a state of full effort, involving the whole mind. What cannot be Maya, which cannot be destroyed by any other means whatsoever, will be destroyed by this complete effort, which is only by this silence, which is called complete effort. That is, this silence means the state of just being. So in order to, it's not a state of activity. In an English translation, the word muichi, which means effort, has been translated as activity. In some contexts, because some outward efforts are activities. So in some contexts, muichi can mean activity, but it doesn't mean activity here. Here it should be taken as effort. And it's not an effort to do anything. It's an effort just to be as we actually are by being self-attentive, because being self-attentive is our natural state. So Bhagavan says it's a state of complete effort, because as he explained elsewhere, so long as in Nāṉ Ār, he says, so long as Vishaya vasanas exist in the mind, so long the investigation, who am I, is necessary. So because the vasanas are always trying to draw our attention outwards, it requires effort to remain firmly, to cling firmly to self-attentiveness. But it's not an effort of doing, it's an effort of just being. Being self-attentive means just being.
Got it, sir.
Does that
Got
answer?
Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
Okay. If you've got another question, shall we keep that? Shall I answer one more from the
Yes,
email? Because I want to try to answer as many as the emails.
Sure.
And then I'll answer your other question after that.
Fine, sir. Fine.
So if you can just stop your mic for the time being, and then I'll come back to you. The next question I've been asked by email is from Jose. My question is regarding the difference between awareness of and thinking. Is there any difference between these two? Consider the following example, and I apologize for bringing this question to such a basic level, but I need to make sure that I truly understand the language. Say there's a bottle of water in front of me. While not thinking about anything, I open it and drink from it. Without thinking about anything, I put it back on the table, with no thought of I drank water or I did not drink water. In absolute lack of thought, can this experience be described as pure awareness? The simple answer to that question is no. But let me start with the first question. Is there any difference between awareness of and thinking? Awareness of means awareness of something. No. What we call thinking is being aware of something other than ourselves. And what we call awareness of things other than ourselves is nothing but thinking. They are one and the same thing. That is, but what we need to understand here is what Bhagavan means by the term thought. When you say without thinking about anything, I pick up the water bottle, and without thinking about anything, I drink it and I put it back on the table. The bottle of water is a thought. The table is a thought. The action of opening the bottle is a thought. The action of drinking the water is a thought. The action of putting it back on the table is a thought. So even if you don't thought, that is, people often think of thought as just the words that go through our head. So when we drink a bottle of water, we don't think, I am drinking this bottle of water. Put it back, I drank water. We don't think like that. But the very awareness that we are drinking that water is itself a thought. Awareness of anything other than ourselves is a thought. Even the ego, who is aware of other things, is itself a thought. So we are never without. The only state that we experience every day in which we are without thought is the state of sleep. Because in sleep, ego has merged back in its source. It's a state of Manolaya. It's a state of complete absorption of ego. In the absence of ego, all other things are absent. So all phenomena are thoughts, and all thoughts are phenomena. Even the objects of the world, the physical, we generally make a distinction between physical phenomena and mental phenomena. All the material objects of the world we take are physical, and the things that go on in our mind, the thoughts and feelings and so on, are mental. So we usually think of there are two types of phenomena. There are mental phenomena and there are physical phenomena. According to Bhagavan, what seem to be physical phenomena are actually just mental phenomena. That's why he says in Nāṉ Ār, in the fourth paragraph, if we remove all thoughts and see, there's no thing separate as mind. And in the 14th paragraph, he says, Jagam embadu ninebe. What is called the world is nothing but thought. This is very nicely explained by him in Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu, in the it's the sixth verse of Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu. He says, Uluhu aim pulangal uru, The world is a form of 5 sense impressions. There, Andrew, not anything else. That is, what we call the world is nothing but sights, sounds, tactile sensations, tastes, and smells. If you remove these 5 types of sense impressions, where is any world? That is, the world is nothing but a series of sensory perceptions. We interpret these sensory perceptions as being caused by something external to ourselves. But actually, Bhagavan says this is all just a dream. Just as in a dream, you experience what seems to be a physical body as yourself, and through the 5 senses of that physical body, you experience what seems to be an external world. But when you wake up, you recognize all those things were just your own, a figment of your own imagination. It was your own mental creation. Bhagavan said this whole world is our own mental creation. So the whole world is nothing but thought. It's nothing but these perceptions, and perceptions are nothing but mental phenomena. So they're all thoughts. So being aware of anything other than ourselves is a thought. And thinking is just being aware of other things. So there is no difference between being aware of things and thinking. They're one and the same thing. So the fact that you weren't thinking, I drank this bottle of water, or I did not drink this bottle of water, that is not absolute lack of thought. You can say of sleep that it's an absolute lack of thought, because the first thought, ego, is absent there. And without the first thought, ego, other thoughts can't exist. As Bhagavan says very clearly in the 5th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. Manatil tondrum ninevugal elavatricum, nanenum nineve mudal ninevu. He puts that in bold. Nanenum ninevu mudal ninevu. That means of all the thoughts that arise in the mind, the thought called I alone is the mudal, the first. Mudal means first, it also means primal, basic, original, or causal thought. So the original thought is only this thought called I. What Bhagavan means by the thought called I is ego, as he clarified elsewhere, as he clarified in the 8th paragraph. So of all the thoughts that arise in the mind, thoughts, as I say here, he said in the previous paragraph, the 4th paragraph, but the world is nothing but thoughts. But if you remove all thoughts and see there's no such thing as a world separate, what he says is, Ninevugale elam niki parkindrapodu. When one sees removing all thoughts, taniai manamendro porol ille. Separately, there's no such thing as mind. So the mind is nothing but thoughts, and then he says, the sentence I meant to refer to is this one. Ninevugale tabitu jagam endro porol anyamai ille. That is, excluding thoughts, there is no separate thing called world. In other words, the world is nothing but thoughts, as he says explicitly in the 14th paragraph. So in this 5th paragraph, he says, of all the thoughts that arise in the mind, that's all the phenomena that appear, we can say, the first thought is ego. Idu arinda perehe, enia ninevugal erukindrana. Only after this rises do other thoughts arise. And then he says the same thing in using different terms. Instead of referring to ego as the thought called I, he refers to it as tanmai, the first person. Only after the first person appears, second and third persons appear. Tanmai indri munile padake gal ira. Without the first person, second and third persons do not exist. That means without this ego, no other thoughts, no thoughts or phenomena can exist. So the state of pure awareness is the state in which we don't rise as ego. That is why Bhagavan said sleep is a state of pure awareness, because there's no ego in sleep. Now we seem to have risen as ego. So everything that we experience, all forms, all phenomena, are all only thoughts. In the absence of ego, but ego is the subject, all other thoughts, all phenomena, all objects, everything other than ourselves, they're all objects perceived by us. So without the subject, there can't be any objects, because objects seem to exist only in the view of the subject. What is the subject? Ego. So long as ego is there, we are not in a state devoid of thought. Jose, I hope that adequately answers that question of yours.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay. So Sanjay, you had another question?
Yes, sir. I have one more question. I've taken a small story from Mahabharata, and then I'll have my reflection on this, and I'll have a comment on that. So Arjuna knows Krishna is Paramatma. Otherwise, why would he choose Krishna without arms to be on his side during the battle of Mahabharata? Arjuna knew that Krishna is the ultimate God, the Paramatma.
Yeah.
Now, Arjuna and Duryodhana went to Krishna to ask for help for the war.
Yes.
Krishna was peacefully lying down, pretending to be asleep.
Yes.
Duryodhana sat near Krishna's head, and Arjuna sat near Krishna's foot. Krishna opened his eyes and saw Arjuna first, and he gave Arjuna the first choice. Arjuna was allowed to make a choice between Krishna without arms and Krishna's entire army with arms. Arjuna chooses Krishna, and the entire army with arms goes to Duryodhana.
Yes.
Now, this is a story, sir.
Yes,
now,
yes,
I'm trying to interpret this in our context of Bhagavan's teachings.
Yes.
And I would like to have your opinion on that. So how I interpret is this, in the context of Atma-vichara, is this, that we are like this Duryodhana, who are happy to get Krishna's army with arms. Here, Krishna's army with arms equates to the army of Vishaya-vasanas.
Yes.
Now, we are surrounded by the army of Vishaya-vasanas, and we have no real complaint with these unending vasanas. So we would like to have all those desires, and we feel that these are all making us happy. So we are surrounded by these,
yes.
And we have cultivated these Vishaya-vasanas.
Yes.
However, when we introduce Krishna into the picture, that is when we try to turn our attention within and try to cultivate Satvasana, this Satvasana is like choosing Krishna over his army, or his armed army. Now, gradually, our Satvasana will slowly but gradually fight against our Vishaya-vasanas and defeat them.
Yes.
So this is how we will win. This is how we will win our internal Mahabharata.
Yes.
Could you comment on this, sir?
Yes, that's a very, very beautiful story. Because
yes, sir.
Where Krishna scolds Arjuna,
yes,
that is, he scolds him, see, what a foolish choice. I offer you my entire army, me, but you chose, why didn't you choose me and not my army? Krishna says, I don't mind if I lose or win this war. I want you always to be by my side. I want you to be the charioteer of my life. So
yes, sir, yes, sir.
It is a beautiful, it's a beautiful example of complete surrender to Guru, complete Guru Bhakti. He didn't want to accept Krishna. Winning war or losing war is immaterial, so long as Krishna is always by his side.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes,
we must have such devotion to Bhagavan. Nothing else should matter. We should always have Bhagavan on our side. And Bhagavan is always on our side. The problem is we're looking away from him. We're looking outside. We need to look back with him because he's always shining in us as eye. And if we, to the extent that we turn within, we are choosing him instead of the army. To the extent we turn outside, we're choosing the army instead of him. So do we want to be wise like Arjuna or foolish like Duryodhana? Arjuna was very happy. I got this army with Krishna's powerful army. Krishna was a very powerful king. So with his army, I will easily win this war, he thought. Already I'm so powerful, and now this extra army, victory is foregone. He was very happy. But the wise one was Arjuna. So we have every moment in our life, we have that choice. Do we allow ourselves to be carried away by our vasanas, or do we turn within and cling to the feet of Bhagavan? That's the choice we have. So that choice that is depicted in that story is a choice we have at every moment of our life.
Definitely.
Most of the time we're making the wrong choice, but we need to make the right choice by turning within.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, sir. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
So I will now answer the next question that has come by email. One friend wrote, recently a dear friend of mine died from liver failure brought on by her many years of alcoholic drinking. Unfortunately, I was unable to visit her in the hospital due to COVID, and there was no funeral. My question is in regard to my own tortured thoughts, because I loved her like a sister and tried to help her in vain. 6 years ago, I shared with her many stories about Bhagavan Śrī Ramana Maharshi to demonstrate the power of love and grace. Of course, it fell on deaf ears. Why am I grieving the loss of what could have been while she was in the body, knowing that she is now free from that wretched body and mind? I feel like such a spiritual failure because it's near impossible to remember to inquire during this time of grief. I don't even understand why I am grieving when I know that there is no real death. What is it going to take for this intellectual knowledge to drop into the heart? I continue to pray for this ego to be annihilated. Complete surrender seems unnatural suddenly. That is, these events of our life, when someone very dear to us passes away, or any other event in our life, these are all like a mirror, showing us the extent of our desire and attachment, the strength of our Vishaya vasanas. You ask why you're grieving. You're grieving because we are attached to the body that seems to be ourself. We take our friends and our loved ones to be the body, to be their body. So when their body passes away, we feel separated from what we love. But your friend is not that body, and you are not this body. But so long as you have attachment to your body, you will have attachment to the body of others also. I mean, to those who are dear to you, your friends, your husband, wife, children, parents, or we have attachment to so many people. Why? So long as we have attachment to this body, it's natural that we should have attachment to those who are close to this body in one way or another. So we all have if we were able to surrender completely, that would be an end of the story. But why we haven't, the reason we are still here, the reason we're still talking about Bhagavan's teaching, the reason we're still aspiring to follow Bhagavan's teachings is because we haven't yet surrendered. Why we haven't surrendered? Because of the strength of our desires and attachments. So when incidents like this happen, when someone who is very dear to us passes away, and particularly under such sad circumstances, because anyone who is addicted to drinking alcohol is because of an inner emptiness in their life. Because we're all in one way or other trying to fill an inner, there's a hole in the heart of all of us. There's a vacuum in the heart of each and every one of us, because what is our real nature? Our real nature is infinite happiness. But as this finite ego, we cannot experience that infinite happiness. So we can never be satisfied by anything except infinite happiness. So as long as we rise as ego, we are always trying to fill an infinite hole. And we cannot fill that infinite hole except by turning within and merging in our real nature and finding that we are that infinite happiness that we've been seeking all this time. So long as we rise as ego, we do have desires and attachments. And those desires and attachments make it difficult for us to turn within. So what are we to do? We shouldn't conclude we're a spiritual failure. If a child who's learning to walk falls over a few times and thinks, oh, I'm a failure at walking, I'll never be able to walk, it will never try. But what is the nature of a child? Have you ever seen any child who gave up trying to walk? Every small child will totter and toddle and eventually be able to walk. So that is the nature of a child. Likewise, it's our nature to seek happiness. And we can never fail in this endeavor, because though we may fall many times, that fundamental dissatisfaction, which is the nature of ego, will continue impelling us to seek happiness. Till now, we've been seeking happiness outside. Now we are trying to change the direction of our mind. Instead of seeking happiness outside, we're trying to seek it within. But we still have very, very strong outward going inclinations. It still seems to us that we derive happiness from things outside. When we're in the company of dear friends, we feel happy. So when our friends die, we feel sad. We're never going to see them again. So this is all because of our, as Bhagavan says, why we believe happiness comes from outside is because of our lack of viveka. Lack of viveka means our lack of judgment, lack of discrimination, because we still think that happiness lies outside. So how do we cultivate that viveka, the required viveka, the required clarity to recognize that happiness doesn't lie in anything external. Happiness is our real nature. We can develop that clarity only by trying to turn our attention within. The more we turn our attention within, the more we are bathing the mind in the light of awareness, in the light of pure awareness. So the mind gets purified, clarified by the effort to turn within. Because of our strong Vishaya vasanas, we try to turn within, and again our mind keeps on coming out again and again. So this is a gradual process. We have to continue trying to turn our attention within for as long as it takes. Just like a small toddler continues for as long as it takes, struggling to walk until finally it can walk with ease. We have just to continue trying our best, however many times we may fall over, however many times we may fail in our attempt to surrender ourselves, to turn within. We just have to keep on trying, and slowly, 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 we will wean our mind away from its desires and attachments, its likes and its dislikes, and we will become willing to surrender ourselves to Bhagavan. So please don't feel a failure. We all, when learning to walk or learning to ride a bicycle, we have to fall many, many times before we can succeed. So the road to success is paved with failure. That is said about worldly things, but it applies equally to the spiritual things. We're all spiritual failures, in a sense, in that we still haven't succeeded in surrendering ourselves completely. But just because we're a failure now, it doesn't mean we're going to be a failure always. Every little moment we try to turn our attention within and thereby surrender ourselves, we are getting one step closer to our goal. And as Bhagavan often used to say, and it's an old saying, but Bhagavan often used to say this also, if you take one step towards God, he will take 10 steps towards you. In fact, it's usually said God will take 9, if you take one step towards God, he will take 9 steps towards you. But in Guru Vachakakavai, when we're going to record Bhagavan saying that, he said God will take 10 steps towards you. So Bhagavan doesn't, Bhagavan goes the full way. He's ready to take all 10 steps towards us, but we have to take that one little step towards him. So what is that one little step? Trying again and again and again to turn our attention within. This is the only way to overcome all our desires and attachments. And so long as we have desires and attachments, losing those who are near and dear to us is very sad. And particularly when those who are near and dear to us have had a sad, unhappy life, it's all the more painful. But we just have to slowly, slowly, slowly try to turn our mind within. And we will certainly succeed in this path. Bhagavan has said, but those who have come under, and just like the prey that has fallen into the jaws of the tiger can never escape, those who have come under the glance of Guru's grace will surely be saved by him and never forsaken. So the fact that we've come to Bhagavan, the fact that we are attracted to his teachings, means that we have come under a glance of his grace. So we may fail many times, but he will eventually succeed. As Sanjay just said, he is Krishna. We are taking him on our side. He comes seemingly unarmed, without his army or anything. But he is, if we take him as our charioteer, as one who is to guide our life, he will surely take full control of us and save us from ourselves. So let us not worry about our failure. Let us not worry about our seeming inability to surrender ourselves, our seeming inability to turn within. Let us just keep on trying with complete trust in him, knowing that he is always by our side and he is giving us all the help we require. So I hope that adequately answers your question. I don't see any other hand raised, so I'll go on to the next question that I received by email. This is a question asked by Kiran. What he says is, as an ego that I seem to be, I have affection and love for Aruṇācala, and I enjoy every moment of it. I just pray to Aruṇācala. I just pray to Aruṇācala just to increase my love for him. However, if we hold on to this ego which is praying and loving Aruṇācala, the ego will be destroyed, and this love and ecstasy I enjoy from Aruṇācala will be lost. More than the happiness, I am fearful of losing this intimacy with Aruṇācala. I know I'm sounding foolish here, but my point is, this relation with Aruṇācala will be lost if I hold on to this ego. I'm just happy if I have this increasing love for the Lord of all lords. I know this may sound foolish, but I'm unable to get my way around this. Can you guide me around this? If it is foolish to think of not destroying ego and just being at the feet, if it is foolish to think of not destroying the ego and just being at the feet of the Lord? Yes, it is foolish. It's a simple answer. But no wrong. I understand where you're coming from, but we need to, so long as Aruṇācala seems to be anything other than ourself, our love is divided between our love for Aruṇācala and our love for ourselves, because we can never cease loving ourselves. So the problem is that we see ourselves as separate from Aruṇācala. In the view of Aruṇācala, we are never separate from Aruṇācala, but in our view, we seem to be something other than Aruṇācala. Bhagavan has written very beautifully, well, all the verses of Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam are very beautiful, but there's one verse which is particularly relevant here. I think it's this one. Okay, no, wait a second. Verse 7 of Aruṇācala Padigam. What Bhagavan sings in verse 7 of Aruṇācala Padigam. if Buddhas, that's the 5 elements, namely space, air, fire, and water, and Bodhikas, everything composed of these elements, which expand, spread out, or unfold as many living beings, do not exist besides you, the space of light, that means the light of pure awareness, who else am I? That is, if everything is Aruṇācala, who am I as something separate? Who else am I? Nothing exists apart from you, then who else am I? O blemishless, if you shine without another in the heart as that space of pure awareness, who am I who come out as if another? That is, he says it very beautifully. I'll read the Tamil. Veli veliti ne mampala buira virivuru Buddha bodhikangal velioli unne. He describes you the space of light, the light, that means the light of awareness. Veli oli unne andri indru enin very yan are ulan. Who am I? Who else am I? Vimala, a pure one. Veli adai, O blemishes, if you Veli adai ulatu verara vilangin veru ena veli varuvena. Who am I who come out as if another? If you shine without another in the heart, that implies it. Since you shine without another in the heart, in that space of pure awareness, who am I who come out as if another? And then the final sentence, he prays, Veli varai Aruṇācala avantalayil virimala paratine vete. Aruṇācala, come out, placing your vast lotus feet on his head. That means on the head of ego. So he's praying to Aruṇācala to crush this ego. So why should we, if we truly love Aruṇācala, why should we want to rise as a separate entity? An analogy that is often used by Dvaitins, that by those who, particularly by followers of Dvaita Marga, that's the path of dualistic devotion, they often say, I want to be a bee sipping the honey. I don't want to lose myself in the honey, because if I lose myself in the honey, I won't be able to enjoy the honey. Bhagavan said about that analogy, he said, is God insentient like honey? Honey cannot enjoy its own sweetness. But so to compare God to honey is wholly inappropriate, because God is Satchidananda. God is the infinite ocean of Satchidananda. As Chit, he is aware of his own Ananda. So if we truly want to enjoy that honey, we have to lose ourselves in the honey. We have to be that honey. So if we truly, you say you are fearful of losing your intimacy with Aruṇācala, but how can you be truly intimate with Aruṇācala so long as you rise as a separate entity? If you want to be truly intimate with Aruṇācala, you have to lose yourself in Aruṇācala. As Bhagavan said in verse verse 101 of Akṣaramaṇamālai, which I referred to earlier, Ambu vilalipol amburu vunilene ambai karetaral Aruṇācala. Like ice in water, melt me as love in you, the form of love. So if we truly want to experience the love of Aruṇācala, we need to lose ourselves wholly in that love. So long as we remain as a separate entity, we are only, whatever happiness we experience is only a tiny fraction of the infinite happiness and infinite love that is the real nature of Aruṇācala. So if you truly love Aruṇācala, why would you not want to give yourself wholly to Aruṇācala? If you still want to retain your separate existence, your existence as a separate entity, your love for Aruṇācala is still only partial. You should have complete all-consuming love for Aruṇācala, such all-consuming love that you want nothing but to lose yourself in Aruṇācala, like ice melting in water. You should want to lose yourself as love in Aruṇācala, who is the infinite ocean of love. Does that adequately answer your question, Kiran? If you're there? No, okay. Jennifer, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was in and out a bit, so if you already answered this, don't worry. But I was just wondering about like the life situation, like the responsibilities of life, like just basic things like getting groceries and responding to people and emails. And if there's like a feeling of burden around that and just wanting to be more connecting with Bhagavan, maybe I'm answering my question, but I think I've heard you say before that we just try to connect with Bhagavan as we do those things.
Yes.
But anyway, if you could elaborate on any of that, like if, yeah, because we're in this life situation, you know, we need to be.
Yeah. Well, we seem to be, yes.
Yeah.
According to Bhagavan, we have only one responsibility. That responsibility is to be happy, because happiness is our real nature. All the other responsibilities, they will all be taken care of by prarabdha, by destiny. That is, if you are destined to go and buy vegetables and to cook food for your family or whatever you are destined to do, you will be made to do. You means not you, but your body, the body, speech, and mind will be made to do these things. Our only responsibility is to surrender ourselves completely to Bhagavan, because only when we surrender ourselves completely can we be truly happy. I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, in which Bhagavan says that not giving even the slightest room to rising of any thought other than self-attentiveness is giving oneself wholly to God. And however much burden we place on God, he will bear it. So responsibilities like going and buying the vegetables, doing the cooking, even going to work or whatever these things are, leave that burden to him. He will make this body, speech, and mind do whatever he wants them to do. As he said in the note to his mother, according to the destiny of each person, he who is for that, meaning God or Guru, will make them act. Being there means being in the heart of each one of them will make them act. So we will be, the actions that we are destined to do will be made to do. That doesn't mean all the actions we do are actions we're destined to do, but whatever other actions we do will not bear fruit, will not produce any effect. Because as he said, what is not to happen will not happen, however much effort we make to make it happen. And what is to happen will not stop, however much we try to, however much we try to obstruct it. This is certain. Therefore, being silent is best. So what does being silent mean? It doesn't mean doing nothing, because the body, speech, and mind must act according to their destiny. So body, speech, and mind will be made to act according to their destiny. What Bhagavan means by being quiet is not rising as ego, because if we rise as ego, then we have likes and dislikes, and then we try and prevent the things that we don't like, and we try and achieve the things that we do like. But however much we try to prevent what we don't like and to achieve what we do like, nothing is going to happen except what is destined to happen. So we can leave the whole burden, the responsibilities you talk about are not your responsibilities. They're responsibilities of the person called Jennifer. That person called Jennifer is not you. That person called Jennifer consists of body, speech, and mind. Let that person called Jennifer do whatever that person called Jennifer is destined to do. Jennifer cannot avoid doing whatever she is destined to do. You need to separate yourself from Jennifer by surrendering yourself wholly to Bhagavan. The more you surrender to Bhagavan, the more everything will happen smoothly without your interference. Even when we rise as ego and try and interfere, we don't make any difference. We cannot achieve anything that is not destined to happen. We cannot avoid anything that is destined to happen. So why to rise as ego? So that's why Bhagavan says, since one supreme ruling power, one Parameshwara Shakti, is driving all karyas, whatever needs to happen or ought to happen, all is being made to happen by that one Parameshwara Shakti. When that is the case, instead of we also yielding to it, why should we be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? Leave even that burden of thinking what you need to do. Leave that to Bhagavan. He will make your body, speech, and mind do whatever they are meant to do. And then he gives the analogy of the train. Though we know the train is bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily leaving our small luggage placed on the train, suffer bearing our luggage on our head? So all these responsibilities you're talking about, buying vegetables or whatever other responsibilities, earning money, taking care of your family or parents or husband or children or whatever it is, all these responsibilities are your luggage. The train in which you're traveling is carrying that luggage already. Why should you suffer carrying it on your head? That is, why should you think, I am a doer, I must do this, I must do that? None of that is necessary. Just leave it all to Bhagavan and it will all happen smoothly without your interference. He will make your body, speech, and mind act as they are meant to act. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
The next question I received by email is from Daniel. What he writes is, intellectually and sometimes even experimentally, it is clear to me that what constitutes this world that I experience is really brain created or thought created. My question is about what you and Bhagavan often point out, but when we try to find the ego, it is not there. Because at the same time, Bhagavan says that in self-realization, the feeling of individuality, which I equate with the ego, does not cease to be, but becomes limitless. So what do you mean by ego when you say, if it is found out to be not there? Is it the thought-created ego person you mean, which cannot be found as a believed reality standing on its own without thought? For I cannot see that the I am, which I view as an aspect of consciousness and which I equate with ego, cannot not exist. It may subtly change and amount to something bigger, but never cease to be. If you mean the ego person, how can this ego person be found to be not there without understanding of its ghost-like and thereby unreal nature as thought? There's a difference between ego and person. The person we seem to be consists of body, generally it's said 5 sheaths: body, life, mind, intellect, and will. This constitutes the person we seem to be. Ego is not this person. Ego is the I that is aware of itself as I am this person, I am this body. So ego is the subject, ego is the perceiver. So long as we rise as ego, we are aware of things other than ourselves. All other things seem to exist only so long as we rise as ego. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. So that means ego is the root of everything. So what Bhagavan means when he says that if we investigate this ego, it will disappear, is that ego, we seem to exist as ego only so long as we're looking outwards. That so long as we're looking at anything other than ourselves. That is, the nature of ego is to be always aware of things other than itself. But if we as ego try to turn our attention within to see ourselves, who am I, what am I, we will find that what we actually are is not this ego, but just pure awareness. As I said, the nature of ego is always to be aware of things other than itself. The nature of pure awareness is always to be aware of itself alone, nothing other than itself. So pure awareness is that awareness which is never aware of anything other than itself. That is our real nature. So long as we're aware of anything other than ourselves, any thought or feeling or phenomenon of any kind whatsoever, we who are aware of that are ego. Regarding I am, according to Bhagavan, pure awareness is always shining in us as our fundamental awareness of our own existence. That fundamental awareness of our own existence is what we refer to as I am. When we say I am means what? It means I exist. And when we say I exist, if we say about other objects, this table exists, that the table is a second or third person. So it is not aware of its existence. But when we say I exist, I am, I is the self-referential pronoun. It's a pronoun referring to oneself. So the fact that we use the pronoun I implies that not only that we exist, but that we are aware of our existence. A table can never say I am. Even a computer cannot say I am. It may, if it's been pre-recorded, it can voice the words I am, but it cannot be aware of itself as I am. Bhagavan says even the body does not say I am. In verses 23 and 24 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, he says, the body does not say I am. What he means by say there, he's using the word say in a metaphorical sense, the body is not aware of itself as I am. So when we say I am, we imply our own existence and our awareness of our existence. That awareness of our existence, that is Satchit, that is the pure awareness. Ego, but when we rise as ego, we are aware of ourselves as I am, but we are not aware of ourselves just as I am. We're aware of ourselves as I am Michael, I am Daniel, I am this body, I am this person. I am existing at such and such a time and such a point in space. There's so many adjuncts, upadis, that limit this I am. We're confining the I am within the limits of this body. So the pure I am, that is what is real. The adjunct bound I am is ego. That is, as ego, we're always aware of ourselves, not just as I am, but as I am this body, I am this person. So when we turn our attention within and see what we actually are, we will see that we are just pure awareness. That is, we are just we are nothing other than that fundamental awareness I am. When we're aware of ourselves just as I am, all the adjuncts, upadis, will drop off. And we will no longer be aware of ourselves as I am this or that. We'll be aware of ourselves just as I am I, as Bhagavan often said. Nāṉ Ār means I am I. Unfortunately, in English books, it's often translated as I-I, but in Tamil, what Nāṉ Ār actually means is I am I. Why Bhagavan uses that term I am I? Because I am not anything other than myself. I cannot be anything other than myself. I cannot be anything other than I. So I am only I. That is the significance of that term. So being aware of ourselves just as I am, or just as I am I, that is being aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we are aware of ourselves as I am this person, what is aware of itself as I am this person is not our real nature, but only ego. So it's only as ego that we're aware of ourselves as I am this person, and but we're consequently aware of other things. Regarding what you say, as Bhagavan says that in self-realization, the feeling of individuality does not cease to be. I don't know where you read that. Often Bhagavan's teachings suffered in translation and also suffered in recording. Bhagavan was very, very, what you call the feeling of individuality, you say you equate it with ego, yes. it is only as ego that we have a sense of individuality. Individuality implies separateness. So it's only when there's otherness that there's individuality. You say, but Bhagavan said, the feeling of individuality does not cease to be, but becomes limitless. What does it mean, a limitless individual? If we have an individuality means separate existence. If we are limitless, if we're infinite, there is no separation. There's no room for any separation. That is that which is, there is nothing other than what is infinite. So what Bhagavan may have said is, but we don't, that when in self-realization, we don't cease to exist. We remain as the infinite whole. We cease to be a limited individual, an ego. We remain as we always actually are, which is the one infinite expanse of Satchidananda. Bhagavan says in verse in verse 20. In verse 28 of Upadēśa Undiyār, when one knows one's real nature, then Anadi, Ananta, Akhanda, Satchidananda. That means when we know what we actually are, then he doesn't say there's no subject there, but the implication is then what will remain or what we will know ourselves to be is Anadi, that means beginningless. Ananta means endless, infinite, or limitless. Akhanda means unbroken, undivided, unfragmented, Satchidananda. That is our real nature. So our real nature is infinite infinite being, awareness, and happiness. So we're in the state of self-realization, we are just that infinite whole. Ego is just an illusory appearance. If, for example, because you ask about why Bhagavan says when we try to find ego, it's not there. If you see a snake, if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, so long as you don't look at it carefully enough, it will continue seeming to be a snake. But if you look at it very carefully, what do you see? You see, oh, it's just a rope. When you see it's a rope, you would see the snake never existed. But so long as you don't look at it carefully enough to see what it actually is, you mistake it to be a snake. And because you mistake it to be a snake, you experience fear and everything. What happens to the fear when you see what it actually is? You'll see all your fear was groundless. That harmless snake is not going to bite you or do it. I mean, that harmless rope is not going to bite you or do anything to you. So all the problems that arise in our life arise because we have risen as ego. When we arise as ego, we always mistake ourselves to be a body, and consequently, we are confined within the limits of time and space. All sorts of problems arise. When we turn our attention within and see what we actually are, we will, just like when we look at the snake carefully, when we look at the snake carefully, we see, but it's not actually a snake, but just a rope. When we look at ego carefully enough, we'll see it is not actually ego, it is just pure awareness. What is the difference between ego and pure awareness? Ego is the awareness that is always aware of itself as I am this body, and it is consequently aware of things that seem to be other than itself, whereas the nature of pure awareness is to be aware of itself alone and to know I alone am, nothing else exists. So I hope that clarifies what Bhagavan meant by that. As I say, ego is not the person. Ego is the I, but is the spurious I that projects this person and attaches itself to this person as I am this person. So the person we seem to be, body, speech, body, life, mind, intellect, and will, these are all objects perceived by us. Even our desires, even our thoughts, even our feelings, all are objects perceived by us. Ego is the perceiver, that which is aware of all these things. Ego is what is sometimes called the sakshi, the witness. It is that which is aware of all things. If all phenomena are objects. Ego is not that's why Bhagavan says ego is formless. It has no form of its own, though it cannot exist without attaching itself to a form of a body, and being aware of that body as I, ego itself is formless. It has no form of its own. It is just the perceiver, the witness, the subject, distinct from all objects. So when we investigate ego, we are turning our attention away from all external phenomena, away from all things other than ourselves, back towards ourselves, back towards away from all things perceived, back towards the perceiver. When we look at the perceiver carefully enough, we'll see that the perceiver is not a perceiver, but just pure awareness.